What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. As always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today we're here to discuss 2025 season. We're looking ahead a little bit in one area that the Green Bay Packers can improve on, and Matt LaFleur talked about this on Tuesday, getting Tucker Kraft in the tight end position more involved, featured more heavily in the offense. But before we dive into all that, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com, including the article version of what we're discussing here today. And my Wisconsin sports radio fans, download the 1055 ESPN Lacrosse app for all your Wisconsin sports radio needs. Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, we got you covered. So, like I said, we're going to talk about Tucker Kraft and, by Matt LaFleur's own ambition on Tuesday, the need to get him involved more heavily in the offense. Now, the offseason is a time for reflection. It's a time for evaluation, right? To figure out what's going well and how you can enhance it, what's not working, and what you can do to improve upon it. But just, 48 hours after the Packers lost to the Eagles, this was already something on Matt LaFleur's mind, saying, hey, we have to do a better job. Those were his words. Said it's on us, the coaching staff, for not recognizing that sooner and getting Kraft more heavily involved during the season as it was all unfolding. Now, Kraft did finish the season with 70 targets. He had 55 receptions. He was first on the team in touchdowns, so it's not as if he was forgotten by any means in the passing game. But the way that the question was asked to Matt LaFleur was, can Tucker Kraft have a George Kittle, Travis Kelce-like impact within the Packers offense, right? Doesn't mean he's going to be one of those players, but can he have that type of do-it-all, heavily involved impact within the Packers offense? And Matt LaFleur's response was 100%. So again, going back to why we're having this conversation, if that's the feeling, right, that he can be that type of player within Matt LaFleur's offense, within this Packers offense, those 70 targets, which ranks 17th, tied for 17th among tight ends in the NFL this season, right? That number, that has to be higher, right? If he can have that type of impact, there's got to be a lot more of him within this Packers offense. And although he still had 70 targets, there were 9 games, so roughly half the season, where Tucker Kraft had 3 or fewer targets in a game. Again, for a player who has the ability to impact the game, as he does as a pass catcher, right? Just providing a spark. And again, if Matt LaFleur does believe that he can have that type of Kittle and Kelce impact, that cannot happen. He has to be a bigger part of not just the game plan week to week, like, all right, let's see what the opponent does, how they're going to defend us. Is there an opportunity to exploit the tight end position in this game? No. If you believe he can be that player, and what Tucker Kraft has shown us in his 2 NFL seasons, then each week he needs to be a focal point of what the Packers want to accomplish on offense this season. And looking back, especially over these last few weeks, the struggles that the passing game had, injuries at the receiver position, just the inconsistencies, right? Drops were an issue all season long. The interceptions, 2 of the interceptions that Jordan Love threw in the Philadelphia Eagles game. And this, we talked about this in the last video, but LaFleur went into how the receivers weren't positioned, the details weren't on point within their routes, which helped contribute to those turnovers that took place. So if you're having those problems, those issues, those inconsistencies, ups and downs unfold over, a several week span, and in some instances, like the drops, that was a season-long issue that this Packers team experienced. Should Tucker Kraft have been a bigger part of this offense? Could he have been one of those go-to options in the passing game for the Packers? And again, can't go backwards, right? Hindsight's always 20/20, but it does sound like in Matt LaFleur's comments saying we have to do a better job of featuring that position, that there is, right? You're looking back and saying there's opportunities out there that we missed. There are opportunities to get him more heavily involved to impact this offense that we missed out on. Now, despite Tucker Kraft being 17th in among tight ends in targets, he still finished 6th in total receiving yards, 733 this season. And a big part of that is his ability after the catch. We all know it. We all see it. He ranked 1st among tight ends in average yards after the catch. He averaged 13.3 yards per catch this season, the 3rd best at the tight end position. And even among receivers, you start to get that 13, 14, 15 yards per catch mark. You're doing some things, right? You're making plays with the ball in your hand. And when we talk about featuring the tight end position, right, obviously it's not just more opportunities. It's not going from 70 targets to 90 targets next season, but it's how he's utilized within the offense, right? And there's a couple factors to that. One, moving him around. So he's not only lining up in line. In the Packers, there were instances, again, where you saw Kraft in the slot, you saw him out wide, but more opportunities to get him lined up differently to create those mismatches. And again, when you have a tight end who can make plays in the passing game at a high level, that impacts the rest of the offense. That impacts how the defense defends your passing game and can help create opportunities, open up advantageous matchups for others within the offense to exploit. So there's a trickle-down effect to that. It's not just moving Kraft from inline to the boundary where he could be matched up with a cornerback where he's going to have the size advantage, but how does the defense respond to that, and how does that create an opportunity elsewhere for this Packers offense to take advantage of? Second part of this equation, again, going beyond just more targets, is when he's targeted within Jordan Love's reads, within Jordan Love's progressions, are there more designed plays where Tucker Kraft can be the first read, can be the second read? Because again, that's going to help inflate those target numbers for him. It's going to help get him the ball, get him more opportunities, and that's part of what featuring a player is. A lot of the receptions that Kraft had this season, he was a check down, right? He was more one of the final reads, a last resort in some instances. If the pocket was collapsing or the receivers downfield weren't getting open, you could dump it off to Tucker Kraft. Are there opportunities to make him that first read where you're getting him the ball right away? The second read so he can be a bigger part of the passing game and what the offense is trying to accomplish. Third part of that, can the Packers get Tucker Kraft targeted in different parts of the field? These numbers are from Pro Football Focus. Of his 70 targets this season, only 10 of them came 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. So again, a lot of his routes were he was the check down option, a lot of shallow routes, stuff to the flat. Again, and that's in part what he does well, right? He's a yards after the catch tight end, get in the ball in space and let Tucker Kraft do what Tucker Kraft does. But as he's growing in the NFL, he's getting more comfortable in this offense, he's showing us that he is very much capable of doing more within the passing game. And I know this is a small sample size, but particularly over the middle of the field on those intermediate and deep routes, so 10 plus yards downfield, he was 6 for 6 on targets this season, 184 yards. It's a lot. And 2 touchdowns. Again, yards after the catch, ball in space, always going to be his bread and butter. But there's more there for him, and it's up to Matt LaFleur, the coaching staff, to make sure that they feature him, again, through the various ways that we described, so he can be a bigger part, so he can have a bigger role in this offense. Because Tucker Kraft said on Monday that he wants a couple things. One, he wants to be the best blocking tight end in football. That's a goal he wants to accomplish, and he wants to be the guy in this offense. And I think there's the opportunity for him to do that, going into not just the upcoming season, but obviously beyond. So before we get out of here, why didn't this happen sooner, right? Why did it take till the end of the season before these comments were made, these conversations were being had? Why didn't it happen sooner? And as always, as we talk about here in the game of football, it's a beautiful thing about it. There's nuance to everything, right? There's a number of factors, positive or negative, that contribute to every single outcome that takes place over the course of a football game, over the course of a season. And part of this equation is, as Matt LaFleur said, they just didn't do a good enough job, right? Whether that's recognizing it soon enough, whether that's making him a focal point beyond just specific game plans where they think it's advantageous. Part of it is, like LaFleur said, they just did not do a good enough job of featuring him. I think some other components as well to this that could have, hindered that decision-making and going down that path is, one, they were pretty short-handed at the tight end position for much of the year. I mean, Luke Musgrave missed a large chunk of the season, and so that meant larger roles for Ben Sims and John Fitzpatrick than obviously what would have been had Luke Musgrave been healthy. And because of not having Musgrave, Tucker Kraft took on a very, very large portion of the tight end snaps this season because he was the guy in that room. And again, the passing game element, not to say that Sims and Fitzpatrick can't impact the game that way, but they weren't given the opportunities. Their role was as blockers. And again, it was a pretty limited role, relatively speaking, that each player had in comparison to Tucker Kraft. So I think being shorthanded and not having Luke Musgrave was a part of that. There's also just the heavy blocking nature that comes with the tight end position within Matt LaFleur's offense. And then the tight end, and so this is something Matt LaFleur talked about as well, but tight ends, he mentioned running backs too, but tight ends being asked to chip, right? When you're asked to chip often, which Tucker Kraft is, and a lot of tight ends in general are across the NFL, that limits your route options, right? You're not going to be able to get into those deeper routes. You're not going to be able to get into a variety of routes because there's just not time. There's only, ideally the ball is out of the quarterback's hands in 2.5 seconds. Sometimes if things aren't open, it gets to 3 seconds if the offensive line's holding up. But if you're a tight end and you're having to chip, having to block for a second, that limits your ability and what you can be asked to do from a route perspective. And like we talked about earlier, if you're asked to do that a lot, you're also not going to be one of the early reads as the quarterback's going through his progression because you're blocking, you're chipping, you're helping out, right? So that makes you one of the last reads as you go through the progression. So again, there's a trickle-down effect to all of this, but I think those are a couple other factors that were in play that led to Kraft having the role that he did. And again, wasn't like he was forgotten about in this offense, but you can tell, and LaFleur acknowledged it, there's more out there for him. So the offseason, it's a time to dissect what went wrong in this Packers passing game down the stretch, to adjust, to make changes. And like we talked about in the last video, there's no one person, there's no one thing that went wrong over this final month of the season. It's everyone. It was everything to a degree at various moments, maybe not all together, but at various moments that when added up, you get the disjointed performance in the passing game that we saw. But for the reasons mentioned, what we see watching the games, just the ability Tucker Kraft has to impact the game, make those big plays with the ball in his hands, I think he can be a big part of the equation, a big part of the solution as the Packers look to, again, iron out these passing game woes that they had during the end of the season here. And it's going to be up to Matt LaFleur as the head coach, the offensive mastermind of this Packers offense to implement those solutions to get Kraft more involved, to make him a bigger, more heavily featured aspect within this offense. So there you have it, my friends. I appreciate you tuning in as always. You know what to do. Hit like on the video. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com and download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. Until next time, friends, take care.